There are moments in life when heaven tries to get your attention. But most people are too distracted, too wounded, or too afraid to recognize the sign standing right in front of them. Today is not an ordinary day. This message did not appear before you by accident. Somewhere deep inside, you have been praying for clarity, waiting for direction, asking God for a breakthrough while fighting silent battles nobody else can see. And now the answer is closer than you think. God is saying, don't miss this moment because opportunities from heaven rarely arrive with noise. Sometimes they come disguised as a delay, a painful lesson, a closed door, or an uncomfortable season that forces you to grow. What you call frustration, God may be calling preparation. What you see as rejection may actually be protection. And what feels like silence may be the very moment God is positioning everything in your favor. Too many people lose their blessing because they keep looking for miracles in familiar places. They expect God to move the way He moved before. But God is not limited to your expectations. He can use one conversation, one decision, one unexpected event to completely change the direction of your life overnight. The question is not whether God is speaking. The real question is, are you listening? Today, you need spiritual awareness. You need the courage to stop doubting yourself. You need the wisdom to recognize that your current struggle is not the end of your story. Something bigger is unfolding behind the scenes. Doors are shifting, chains are breaking, and the very thing you almost gave up on may be the thing God is about to restore. So stay focused, stay faithful, because this message could be the confirmation you have been praying for. And if you ignore it, you may miss the very opportunity heaven placed in your path today. There is a reason certain moments in your life feel heavier than others. There is a reason some days seem ordinary on the outside, yet deep within your spirit, you feel a strange urgency, a pull you cannot explain. That is because divine timing is different from human timing. Beings are obsessed with clocks, schedules, deadlines, and immediate results. But God does not operate according to panic. He operates according to purpose. And when the timing is right, nothing on earth can stop what He has already prepared for you. Many people become frustrated because they believe delay means denial. Pray once and expect immediate change. They plant a seed and expect a harvest the next morning. But the greatest things God creates go through a process. A tree does not appear overnight. A diamond is not formed in comfort. And a strong person is not built in easy seasons. Every delay you experience carries a lesson, preparation, and a transformation that your future will require. Right now, you may feel like you are behind in life. You may look around and see others succeeding while you are still waiting for your breakthrough. You may wonder why certain doors keep closing, why opportunities disappear, or why prayers seem unanswered. But what if God is protecting you from receiving something before you are ready for it? What if the delay is not punishment, but preparation? Because some blessings become dangerous when they arrive too early. A person without wisdom can destroy success. A person without discipline can waste favor. Person without spiritual maturity can lose the very thing they prayed for. That is why divine timing matters. God is more concerned with who you are becoming than with what you are receiving. He understands that the blessing must match the character. Otherwise, the gift becomes a burden instead of a breakthrough. Think about the moments in your past that did not make sense at first. There were relationships you cried over losing, only to later realize they were leading you toward destruction. There were opportunities you begged for that never happened. Yet, years later, you discovered that closed door protected your peace. At the time, you thought God was ignoring you. In reality, He was guiding you away from something that could have damaged your destiny. That is the problem with human vision. Only see the present moment. But God sees the entire journey. He sees what is ahead. He sees the trap hidden behind the opportunity. He sees the pain connected to certain decisions. And because He sees farther than you, His timing will not always align with your emotions. Sometimes God waits because your spirit is still growing. Sometimes He waits because the right people have not yet entered your life. Sometimes He waits because certain battles must first remove the weakness inside you. Understand this clearly. Delay does not mean abandonment. Silence does not mean absence. Just because you cannot see movement does not mean heaven is inactive. There are seasons where God works underground, like roots growing beneath the soil before the tree becomes visible. During those hidden seasons, most people quit. They lose faith because they do not see immediate evidence. But the strongest faith is built when you continue believing even while nothing around you appears to be changing. And this is why today matters, because some of you are standing at a turning point without even realizing it. God has been aligning circumstances behind the scenes, conversations, opportunities, actions, and lessons are all moving into place. What looked like random events were actually pieces of preparation. The pain taught you wisdom. The loneliness taught you strength. The waiting taught you patience. Nothing was wasted. But here is the danger. Patience can make people step out of divine timing. Fear causes people to force doors that God never opened. Desperation makes people settle for less than what heaven intended for them. And when people move ahead of God's timing, often create unnecessary suffering for themselves. You must learn to trust the process, even when you do not understand it. Trust that God knows when you are ready. Trust that what belongs to you cannot be stolen by another person. Trust that the right opportunity will arrive at the right moment. Because when divine timing finally reveals itself, everything changes quickly. Years of struggle can shift in one moment. One phone call can change your direction. One encounter can unlock your purpose. One decision rooted in faith can transform your entire future. So stop measuring your life against other people's timelines. Stop believing you are too late. Stop thinking God forgot about you. Your story is unfolding according to a higher plan. And if you remain faithful during the waiting season, you will eventually understand why certain things had to happen exactly when they did. Because God's timing is never accidental. It is precise, intentional, always connected to a purpose greater than what you can currently see. One of the greatest mistakes people make is ignoring the signs God places in front of them every single day. Most people are waiting for a loud voice from heaven, a dramatic miracle, or some supernatural event that removes all doubt. But many times, God speaks quietly. He speaks through patterns, through repeated lessons, through discomfort, through unexpected delays, and even through the people who enter and leave your life. The problem is not that God is silent. The problem is that people are distracted. Some signs appear as opportunities you almost ignored because they looked too small. Some signs appear as warnings you refused to accept because they challenged your comfort. And some signs appear through pain itself. There are moments when your spirit keeps telling you something is wrong, but you continue forcing yourself into situations that drain your peace. Deep inside, you know certain environments are unhealthy, certain relationships are damaging, and certain habits are destroying your future. Yet many people continue walking down dangerous paths because they refuse to pay attention to what God is revealing. God will often send signs before major shifts happen in your life. Before a breakthrough, there is usually preparation. Before elevation, there is often separation. Before transformation, there is discomfort. But if you misunderstand those moments, you may mistake divine guidance for punishment. What if the reason certain people walked away from your life is because they could not go where God is taking you? What if the frustration you feel in your current season is actually God pushing you toward a greater purpose? Sometimes the pain is not there to destroy you. Sometimes it is there to wake you up. Too many people sleepwalk through life. They repeat the same mistakes, ignore the same warnings, and wonder why nothing changes. God may show them red flags again and again, but they continue chasing what looks good instead of what is good for their soul. Eventually, the consequences arrive. Not because God hated them, but because they ignored the wisdom He kept trying to give them. There are signs in your exhaustion. There are signs in your anxiety. There are signs in the constant battles you keep facing. Meditate. Sometimes your spirit becomes tired because you are carrying things God never asked you to carry. Some people are emotionally exhausted because they are trying to maintain relationships built on manipulation instead of love. Others are spiritually drained because they keep compromising their values just to fit into places where they do not belong. You must learn to pay attention to what repeatedly disturbs your peace. Peace is one of the greatest indicators of divine alignment. When something constantly pulls you away from clarity, purpose, discipline, and faith, you cannot keep pretending it is harmless. God does not guide people into confusion and destruction. He guides them toward growth, wisdom, and purpose. And sometimes the sign is not external. Sometimes the sign is the voice inside you that refuses to stay quiet. That feeling telling you it is time to change. That conviction warning you to let go of destructive habits. That inner push telling you to stop playing small and finally step into the purpose God placed inside you. Many people ignore that voice for years because change feels uncomfortable. They stay trapped in fear because familiarity feels safer than growth. But every season of growth requires courage. You cannot enter a new level while clinging to old thinking. You cannot receive a different future while repeating the same patterns. God may be opening doors around you right now, but if your mindset remains trapped in doubt, insecurity, and fear, you may walk past the very opportunity you prayed for. That is why awareness matters. Spiritual blindness is dangerous because it causes people to miss what heaven is trying to reveal. Some miss blessings because they are too distracted by entertainment. Others miss purpose because they are too focused on pleasing people. And many miss transformation because they are addicted to comfort. Look carefully at your life today. What lessons keep repeating? What situations keep draining your energy? What doors continue closing no matter how hard you force them open? What inner conviction keeps returning no matter how much you try to silence it? Those are not random experiences. Those are signs demanding your attention. God will not force you to listen. He gives guidance, wisdom, and warnings, but you must choose whether you will pay attention. Every day, people ignore signs that could save them years of pain. They ignore wisdom because emotion is louder. They ignore truth because pride is stronger. They ignore purpose because temporary pleasure feels easier. But today is your opportunity to become aware. Stop dismissing the things your spirit has been trying to tell you. Stop calling it coincidence every time life keeps pushing you toward change. Sometimes God removes comfort because comfort has become your prison. Sometimes He allows disruption because your old life can no longer contain your future. Do not miss the signs standing in front of you today. The direction of your life can change the moment you stop ignoring what God has been revealing all along. Fear has stopped more people from reaching their purpose than failure ever will. Most people are not destroyed because they lack talent, intelligence, or opportunity. They are destroyed because fear convinces them to stay trapped in places where they no longer belong. Fear whispers that they are not ready, not qualified, not strong enough, or not worthy enough to move forward. And when fear controls the mind, it becomes impossible to recognize the doors God is opening. Faith and fear cannot lead your life at the same time. One will always overpower the other. Fear focuses on obstacles, but faith focuses on possibilities. Fear magnifies weakness, but faith activates courage. Fear keeps you staring at the storm, while faith reminds you that God is greater than the storm itself. Many people say they trust God, but the moment life becomes uncertain, panic takes control. They pray for change, yet resist every situation that requires growth. They ask for elevation, yet avoid every challenge that could strengthen them. They want breakthrough without discomfort, success without sacrifice, and transformation without surrender. But faith does not grow inside comfort zones. Meditate. Faith grows when you continue walking, even when you cannot see the full path ahead. Right now, there are people listening to this message who know exactly what fear has stolen from them. Fear stole opportunities because they hesitated too long. Fear destroyed relationships because they were too afraid to be vulnerable. Fear delayed dreams because they kept waiting for the perfect moment that never arrived. And perhaps the greatest tragedy is this: many people spend their entire lives preparing for a future they are too afraid to step into. Fear is powerful because it feels logical. It gives excuses that sound reasonable. It tells you to stay safe, stay hidden, and avoid risk. But safety can become a prison when it prevents you from obeying the purpose God placed inside you. There are people stuck in jobs they hate, environments that drain them, and habits that destroy them, simply because fear convinced them change was too dangerous. But listen carefully. The future you desire will always exist on the other side of fear. Every breakthrough requires movement. Every transformation requires trust. Every season of elevation demands that you stop allowing fear to make decisions for your life. Faith is not pretending problems do not exist. Faith is believing that problems do not have the final word. Faith is waking up every day with confidence that God is still working behind the scenes, even when circumstances appear impossible. It is choosing to trust divine purpose instead of temporary emotion. There will be moments when life tests your faith. There will be nights where doubt becomes loud and uncertainty feels overwhelming. You may experience delays that make you question your direction. You may face rejection that attacks your confidence. You may stand in situations where everything around you says, give up. But those moments reveal who truly controls your mind: fear or faith. Some of the strongest people in history were terrified before stepping into their purpose. Courage does not mean the absence of fear. Courage means refusing to let fear stop you from moving forward. The person who changes their life is not always the person with the most confidence. Often, it is simply the person willing to take one more step despite uncertainty. And this is where many people miss their blessing. They wait until they feel fearless before they obey God. But faith often requires action before clarity arrives. Meditate. Sometimes you must move before all the answers appear. Sometimes you must trust before you fully understand. Because if God showed you the entire journey at once, you might become overwhelmed by the size of the calling on your life. That is why faith is necessary. Faith gives you strength for the unknown. It allows you to keep building while others are doubting. It keeps your spirit stable when life becomes unpredictable. And most importantly, faith reminds you that your current situation is not your final destination. Today, many people are standing at the edge of change. God is calling them toward growth, healing, discipline, purpose, and transformation. But fear keeps whispering, what if you fail? Yet the better question is this: what if you succeed? What if the opportunity you are afraid to pursue becomes the very thing that changes your entire future? What if the pain you are experiencing right now is preparing you for a level of strength you never imagined possible? You cannot keep allowing fear to shrink your destiny. You cannot keep doubting yourself every time God calls you towards something greater. The same God who brought you through past battles is still guiding you now. The same God who protected you before will continue opening doors at the right time. So stop feeding your fear more than your faith. Stop replaying worst case scenarios in your mind. Stop assuming defeat before the battle even begins. Fear will always try to convince you that the risk is too great. But faith reminds you that with God, even impossible situations can turn into miracles. And one decision rooted in faith can completely change the direction of your life forever. There are people praying every day for breakthrough, asking God to change their lives, open doors, remove struggles, and release blessings into their future. But many fail to understand one important truth. Breakthrough is deeply connected to obedience. You cannot continually ignore divine direction and still expect divine results. God's promises are powerful, but they are often connected to the willingness of a person to listen, trust, and act. Obedience is difficult because it often requires you to move against your emotions. Sometimes God asks you to walk away from people you love because those relationships are destroying your peace. And sometimes He asks you to let go of habits that have become comfortable but are slowly poisoning your future. Sometimes He pushes you into unfamiliar territory where your faith must become stronger than your fear. And this is where most people struggle. They want the blessing, but they resist the process required to receive it. Many people think obedience is weakness because the world teaches rebellion, pride, and self-centered thinking. But true obedience is strength under control. It is the ability to trust God even when your emotions are screaming in the opposite direction. It is choosing purpose over pleasure, discipline over comfort, wisdom over impulse. Every breakthrough begins with a decision to stop ignoring the voice inside you, a decision to stop compromising your values just to fit into places where you no longer belong, a decision to stop running from the calling God placed on your life. Some people are waiting for heaven to move, while heaven is waiting for them to obey. There are doors that only open after obedience. There are blessings connected to discipline. There are opportunities that appear only after you finally release the distractions holding you back. But too many people stay stuck because they continue delaying the very change God has been calling them toward for years. Think about how often people sabotage themselves. They ask God for peace, but continue entertaining chaos. They pray for healing, but keep returning to toxic environments. They ask for success, but refuse to develop consistency and discipline. And they wonder why nothing changes. Breakthrough does not happen through words alone. It happens when belief turns into action. Obedience also requires sacrifice, and sacrifice is uncomfortable because it forces you to release something familiar in order to receive something greater. Sometimes the old version of you must die before the new version can emerge. Old habits, old mindsets, old fears, old attachments cannot follow you into the future. God is preparing for you. This is why certain seasons feel lonely. God will often separate you from distractions before elevating your life. Not everyone can go where you are going. Some people were only assigned to a chapter of your story, not the entire journey. But when people fear loneliness more than disobedience, they remain connected to environments that slowly destroy their purpose. Obedience is not always dramatic. Sometimes it looks simple. Waking up with discipline when nobody is watching. Controlling your attitude when frustration rises. Refusing to retaliate against people who hurt you. Staying faithful during seasons where there is no visible reward. Continuing to trust God when the outcome is unclear. These small acts of obedience build the foundation for major breakthroughs later. And here is what many people fail to realize. Every act of obedience strengthens your spirit. Every time you choose faith over temptation, wisdom over emotion, and discipline over distraction, you become stronger. You develop clarity. You build character. You become prepared for the responsibility connected to the blessing you are asking for. Because blessings without character can destroy a person. Success without discipline becomes dangerous. Influence without wisdom creates chaos. That is why God often works on the person before releasing the breakthrough. He prepares your spirit so that when the opportunity finally arrives, you have the strength to handle it correctly. Right now, there may be something in your life God has been asking you to release. A toxic habit, a destructive relationship, a negative mindset, a fear that keeps controlling your future. And deep inside, you already know it. Conviction has been returning again and again. That discomfort you feel is not random. It is the signal that change is necessary. But obedience requires trust. You must believe that what God has ahead of you is greater than what you are leaving behind, even when you cannot fully see the outcome, even when the path feels uncertain. Because breakthrough often begins the moment you finally surrender control. Too many people delay their destiny because they keep negotiating with the very things God told them to leave behind. They want transformation while protecting old patterns. They want elevation while remaining attached to limitation. But you cannot step into a new season carrying the chains of the old one. And this may be the moment where your breakthrough begins. Not tomorrow, not someday in the future, right now. The moment you stop resisting what God has been telling you to do, the moment you stop making excuses for your fear, the moment you choose obedience over comfort. Because when obedience aligns with faith, doors begin to open that no human being can close. Opportunities appear. Peace returns. Clarity increases. Strength grows. And suddenly you realize that the breakthrough was never just about changing your circumstances. It was about changing you into the person capable of carrying the blessing God had prepared all along. There comes a moment in every person's life when everything begins to shift. A moment that looks ordinary on the outside but carries the power to completely change the direction of the future. Most people do not recognize it at first because life-changing moments rarely announce themselves with noise. They arrive quietly through a decision, through a realization, through a message that reaches your spirit at exactly the right time. And today may be one of those moments for you. For too long, many people have been living beneath their potential. They have allowed fear, disappointment, rejection, past failures to convince them that nothing greater is possible. They learned how to survive, but they forgot how to believe again. They became so focused on avoiding pain that they stopped expecting purpose. But God did not create you merely to exist. You were created with intention. There is something inside you that the world still needs, and the season you are entering may finally reveal it. Problem is that many people miss their moment because they keep waiting for certainty. They wait until they feel fully confident. They wait until fear disappears. They wait until every condition becomes perfect. But destiny rarely moves according to comfort. Your greatest opportunity may arrive while you still feel unprepared. Your breakthrough may appear while you are still fighting doubt. Meditate. And your calling may begin in the middle of confusion. This is why you cannot afford to stay asleep spiritually. Too many people spend years ignoring the signs that heaven keeps placing in front of them. They keep repeating the same cycles, entertaining the same distractions, and settling for environments that suffocate their growth. Deep down, they know they were made for more, but comfort becomes addictive. Familiar pain starts to feel safer than unfamiliar growth. But something happens when a person finally wakes up. Something changes when they stop allowing the opinions of others to control their identity. They begin to realize that every battle they survived carried a lesson. Every delay carried preparation. Every disappointment built strength. Suddenly, they stop seeing themselves as victims of life and start recognizing themselves as people being shaped for purpose. Your moment arrives when your mindset changes. The external breakthrough often begins with an internal awakening. The day you stop doubting your worth, the day you stop begging for acceptance in places where you are constantly dishonored, the day you stop shrinking yourself to fit environments that no longer align with your calling. That is when transformation begins. And understand this clearly: God does not waste pain. The tears you cried in silence were not meaningless. The nights where you felt abandoned were not forgotten. The seasons where everything seemed delayed were not signs that your future had disappeared. God was building endurance inside you. He was strengthening your spirit for the next level of your life. Some people are about to walk into opportunities they prayed for years ago. Some are about to experience restoration after seasons of heartbreak. Others are about to discover gifts and abilities they buried because fear convinced them they were not good enough. The people who experience these breakthroughs are usually the ones willing to move when God says, move. Your moment has already been trying to reach you. through discomfort, through conviction, through the constant feeling that you cannot continue living the same way anymore. That restlessness inside you is not accidental. It is the signal that your current season can no longer contain the future God is preparing. But moments can be missed, opportunities can be ignored, and purpose can remain buried when people choose fear over faith. That is why today matters so much. Because you may be standing at a crossroads without fully realizing it. One path leads back to the same cycles, the same excuses, and the same limitations. Other path leads toward growth, healing, discipline, and purpose. The choice belongs to you. Will you continue doubting yourself every time God calls you higher? Will you keep allowing past mistakes to define your future? Will you stay trapped in environments that constantly drain your peace and weaken your spirit? Or will you finally believe that your life was designed for something greater? There are moments when heaven gives people confirmation, not because they are perfect, but because they are ready to listen. And perhaps this message is your confirmation. Confirmation that your waiting season is not permanent. Confirmation that your struggle has not been wasted. Confirmation that the dream inside you is still alive even after disappointment tried to kill it. Do not underestimate this season. The decision you make now may shape the next chapter of your entire life. One act of faith can unlock years of breakthrough. One moment of courage can break chains that held you back for decades. One decision to trust God fully can move you into a future you never imagined possible. So stop speaking defeat over your life. Stop acting as if your best days are behind you. Stop treating yourself like someone forgotten by heaven. Your moment has arrived, and the door standing before you may never look exactly like this again. Walk through it with faith. At the end of the day, life is not just about what happens to you. It is about how you respond when God tries to move you into a higher place. Some people spend their entire lives waiting for a miracle while ignoring the instructions connected to it. Others miss their breakthrough because fear convinces them to stay where they are comfortable. But today, you have been reminded of something powerful. Your current season is not the end of your story. God is still working behind the scenes, even when you cannot see immediate results. Every delay, every battle, every closed door, and every painful lesson has been shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the future ahead. Nothing you survived was meaningless. The pressure was building strength. The waiting was building patience. And the struggle was building faith. Now the responsibility is yours. You can continue doubting yourself, ignoring the signs, and repeating the same cycles. Or you can rise into the person God created you to become. You can choose faith over fear, obedience over excuses, purpose over distraction. Because the moment you align your life with God's direction, everything begins to change. Do not underestimate what can happen after one decision rooted in faith. One moment of courage can open doors that years of fear kept closed. One act of obedience can shift the entire direction of your future. And one season of discipline can produce a lifetime of breakthrough. So as you move forward from this message, remember this: you are not forgotten, you are not abandoned, and you are not too late. Your story is still unfolding. Your purpose is still alive. And the God who brought you through every past battle is still guiding your steps today. Stay alert. Stay faithful. Whatever you do, don't miss the moment heaven is placing in front of you right now.